My parents celebrated my brother with a luxury cruise and dismissed my promotion, until I exposed the truth that made everything collapse. My older brother, Tyler, 31 years old, male, works in insurance sales and has been the golden child since we were kids. Our parents worship the ground he walks on, while I've basically been invisible my entire life. This is the story of how I finally made them all pay attention. This whole thing started last April when Tyler got promoted to regional sales manager at his insurance company. It was a big deal apparently. Corner office, company car, the whole package. I was genuinely happy for him when he called to tell me. We weren't close, but I didn't wish him any harm. My parents, they absolutely lost their minds with excitement. Like, you'd think he'd cured cancer or something. Within 3 days, they booked him and his girlfriend Jessica on a 2-week Mediterranean cruise. Not just any cruise, either. 5-star everything, private balcony, spa treatments, the works. We're talking $15,000 minimum. I found out about the cruise from Tyler's Instagram, not from my parents telling me directly, just endless photos of champagne toasts and sunset dinners with captions like, "Celebrating our successful son and so proud of what you've accomplished." 3 months later, I got promoted to operations manager at my warehouse. My first time managing a full department, overseeing about 30 people with a decent raise, and finally getting some real respect at work. I was pretty excited about it. I told my parents over Sunday dinner at their place. Dad was grilling burgers. Mom was fussing with potato salad, normal family stuff. I waited for the right moment and said, "Hey, got some good news. They promoted me to operations manager." Dad looked up from the grill, nodded, and said, "That's nice, son." Mom asked if I'd have to work longer hours. Then, literally 2 minutes later, we were back to talking about Tyler's new German Shepherd puppy they'd helped him buy. That was it. No follow-up questions about my new responsibilities, no asking about the raise, no celebration dinner, or even a congratulatory text later. Just nothing. Meanwhile, Tyler couldn't sneeze without them throwing a parade. I started paying closer attention after that, really watching how they interacted with each of us instead of just going through the motions at family gatherings. 2 weeks after I told them about my promotion, I found out from my Aunt Carol that my parents had offered to pay for Tyler's wedding venue. This was news to me because Tyler wasn't even engaged yet. He and Jessica had been dating for about 2 years, but no ring, no announcement, nothing official. When I asked Mom about it later, she brushed it off. "We just want to make sure they're set up properly when the time comes. You know how expensive weddings are." But here's what really got me. My birthday came around in August. Nothing fancy. Just turned 28 on a Wednesday. I called them to see if they wanted to grab dinner or something. Dad answered and immediately said, "Oh, shoot. We're actually heading out of town tomorrow." "Where, to?" "The same cruise line Tyler and Jessica went on. They offered us a return customer discount," he said. I'm sitting there holding the phone, just stunned. They were going on another cruise during my birthday week using a discount they got from celebrating my brother. "Maybe we can do something when we get back," Dad added. But we both knew that wasn't happening. That night, I ordered pizza and ate it alone while scrolling through their new cruise photos. Tyler had already commented, "Round 2, with like 40 likes. Not one person mentioned it was my birthday week. That's when something clicked in my brain. This wasn't about any specific incident. This was about how they fundamentally saw me in the family hierarchy. I was the backup son, the one who'd always be fine on his own. The one they could ignore because he never complained. And you know what? They were absolutely right. I never did complain. I just quietly accepted whatever scraps of attention they threw my way and said, "Thank you." But that night, something shifted. Not anger exactly, but this cold clarity, like suddenly seeing the whole picture instead of just my little corner of it. After that birthday realization, I started documenting everything. Not in a crazy stalker way, just keeping track of the obvious stuff: gift differences, celebration discrepancies, financial support patterns. What I discovered was honestly shocking. In the past 2 years, my parents had spent roughly $50,000 on Tyler-related expenses: the cruise, a partial down payment on his BMW lease, the wedding venue prepayment, random gifts like furniture and clothes. Plus, they were covering his health insurance and cell phone bill because his job benefits weren't great. What did they spend on me in the same time frame? Maybe $400 total. Birthday dinners, Christmas gifts that looked like they were grabbed from a gas station. But here's where it gets interesting. I'd helped Dad set up their online banking 2 years ago when they got new accounts. And he'd never changed the passwords. So, I could see exactly where their money was going. Tyler wasn't just getting occasional help. They were basically funding his entire lifestyle: car payments, rent assistance, credit card bailouts when he overspent, random loans that never got paid back. They were spending almost $2,000 a month supporting their 31-year-old son. The crazy part, they were hiding it from other family members. Uncle Pete, who worked at a credit union, had no idea how deep their financial support went. Aunt Carol thought they'd helped with Tyler's car down payment, not that they were covering the full monthly lease. But the real kicker was what this support was costing them. They'd pulled over $40,000 out of their retirement accounts in the past 3 years. Early withdrawal penalties, tax hits, the whole nightmare. Their savings account, which used to have around $30,000, was down to maybe $6,000. They were literally destroying their retirement to fund Tyler's fantasy lifestyle. And Tyler had no clue how much they were sacrificing because he thought they were just generous parents with extra money lying around. Around Christmas, I started testing the waters, asking innocent questions at family gatherings. Nice watch, Tyler. Early Christmas gift? Or, wow, that restaurant looked expensive on Instagram. Must be nice having such great job benefits. What I learned was that Tyler genuinely believed he was successful. He thought his lifestyle was sustainable because he'd never had to actually pay for it himself. Car payments, insurance, half his rent, random emergencies. Mom and Dad covered it all while he spent his actual salary on restaurants and vacations. Meanwhile, my parents were eating generic cereal for breakfast so they could afford Tyler's BMW payment. That's when I started planning. Not revenge exactly, more like a reality check. They wanted to treat me like I didn't exist. Fine, let's see how much I actually mattered. When their golden boy's house of cards started falling down, Tyler announced his engagement to Jessica in February with this massive social media production. Professional photographer, drone footage of the proposal, hashtags, the whole influencer playbook. The caption was something like, "She said yes. Can't wait to build our future with the support of our amazing families." My parents' response was immediate and over the top. Mom commented, "We're so proud. This is going to be the wedding of the century." Dad shared the post with his own caption about watching his son achieve his dreams. Wedding of the century with what money? See, I'd been monitoring their bank accounts for months now. They were already stretched thin from supporting Tyler's lifestyle, and now they were talking about funding a wedding that would probably cost $40,000 minimum. The engagement party was scheduled for April at some country club outside town. I got my invitation in the mail, not hand-delivered like Jessica's bridesmaids got, just a standard invite with my name written in like an afterthought. I RSVP'd yes and started phase 1 of my plan. The party was exactly what you'd expect. Overpriced appetizers, open bar, maybe 80 people, including distant relatives and Tyler's work colleagues. Jessica looked gorgeous. Tyler was working the room like a politician, and my parents were glowing like they'd personally arranged the engagement. I spent most of the evening just listening and observing, picking up information, understanding the family dynamics from an outsider's perspective. It was actually kind of fascinating how obvious the favoritism was once you knew what to look for. About an hour into the party, I found myself near the bar with Uncle Pete, Aunt Carol, and a couple of Tyler's work buddies. They were talking about wedding costs and how expensive everything had gotten. Uncle Pete was saying something about how weddings used to cost $5,000 total, and now you couldn't even get flowers for that. One of Tyler's colleagues, let's call him Brad, laughed and said, "Yeah, Tyler was telling us they're looking at venues that cost more than I make in 6 months. Must be nice to have that insurance money. Perfect opening." "Oh, Tyler's not paying for the wedding," I said casually, like I was mentioning the weather. "Mom and Dad are covering it. They've been helping him out with a lot of stuff lately." You could feel the conversation shift. Uncle Pete looked confused. "Really? I thought Tyler was doing pretty well with his promotion." "He is," I said. "But you know how expensive it is to get established these days. Mom and Dad like to make sure he's comfortable." Aunt Carol frowned. "How much are they helping exactly?" Here's where I could have backed down, kept the family peace, pretended everything was normal. Instead, I shrugged and said, "Well, they're covering the wedding venue, helped with his car lease, been assisting with rent. I think they pulled some money out of their retirement to help with the engagement ring, too." The silence was immediate and uncomfortable. Brad looked awkward. Uncle Pete's face went from confused to concerned. "They pulled money from their 401k? He asked. He knew enough about finances to understand how bad that was. "Just some," I said. "But hey, that's what family's for, right?" I excused myself to get a refill and watched from across the room as Uncle Pete had what looked like a very serious conversation with my dad. Aunt Carol was talking quietly with Mom, looking worried. By the end of the night, the mood had definitely shifted. People were still congratulating Tyler and Jessica, but there was this undercurrent of concern. I heard snippets of conversations about financial responsibility and retirement planning. Tyler noticed something was off. I watched him trying to figure out why everyone was suddenly asking him questions about his job security and long-term financial planning. But the real payoff came 3 days later when Uncle Pete called my dad for what he described as an urgent financial conversation. I know this because Dad called me afterward, which literally never happens. "Your uncle seems to think we're having money problems." Dad said he got some idea that we're draining our retirement to help Tyler. "Huh?" I said, "Where would he get that idea?" "I have no clue, but he's insisting on taking us to lunch this weekend to discuss our financial planning." It's embarrassing. Uncle Pete wasn't just family. He was a credit union manager with 30 years of experience. If anyone could break down exactly how financially reckless my parents were being, it was him. The lunch happened that Saturday. I wasn't invited, obviously, but I got the full report from Aunt Carol later that week. Uncle Pete had done his homework. He'd researched average retirement needs, calculated their current trajectory, run numbers on early 401k withdrawals. He presented it all in a folder like a financial intervention. The bottom line, if they kept supporting Tyler at the current rate, they'd be completely broke within 4 years. Not struggling broke, but losing the house and eating cat food broke. Mom cried during the presentation. Dad got defensive, but couldn't argue with the math. Uncle Pete offered to help them create a budget and connect them with a financial advisor. When they got home, they had what Aunt Carol described as a very emotional conversation with Tyler about boundaries and financial independence. Tyler called me that Sunday night, absolutely furious. "What the hell did you say to Uncle Pete at the engagement party?" "What do you mean?" "Don't play stupid." He ambushed Mom and Dad with some financial lecture, and now they're talking about cutting back on helping me right before my wedding. I could hear the panic in his voice, not just about the money, but about his image. His whole identity was built on being the successful son. Without parental subsidies, that image was going to crumble fast. "I just mentioned they were helping you out," I said. Was I supposed to lie? "You could have minded your own business. This doesn't affect you." "Actually, it does affect me when they're destroying their retirement to fund your lifestyle." "I didn't know it was that serious because you didn't want to know. It was easier to just take the money and assume they could afford it." He hung up on me, but I could hear Jessica crying in the background before the line went dead. The damage was done, though. The family narrative had shifted. Instead of Tyler being the successful son who deserves celebration, he was suddenly the irresponsible son who was bankrupting his parents. And I was just getting started. After the engagement party fallout, things got quiet for a few weeks. My parents were clearly having private conversations with Tyler that I wasn't part of, but the Instagram posts of expensive dinners and shopping trips slowed way down. I figured they were trying to implement some of Uncle Pete's suggestions about financial boundaries. Maybe this would all work out and they'd find a healthier balance. But then Jessica started posting about wedding planning. And holy cow, these people had no concept of scaling back. Designer dress shopping in Chicago. Venue tours at places that charged $8,000 just for the space. Catering tastings at restaurants where entrees started at $35. She was hashtagging everything with dream wedding and once in a lifetime. Either they were completely ignoring Uncle Pete's advice or they were planning to fund this wedding with Monopoly money. I checked Dad's bank account. Yeah, I know. Not proud of it, but I needed to know what was happening. They had taken out a personal loan for $12,000 at a brutal interest rate, plus opened a new credit card with an $18,000 limit. They weren't scaling back. They were going deeper into debt. That's when I realized this wasn't just about favoritism anymore. My parents were literally destroying their financial future, and Tyler was either too stupid or too selfish to stop it. I started making some strategic phone calls. First call was to my buddy Dave, who works for the county planning office. We played football together in high school and stayed in touch over the years. I asked him about some zoning stuff for work. Totally legitimate question, but also mentioned how crazy expensive weddings had gotten. "Tell me about it," Dave said. "My cousin spent $35,000 on hers last year. Absolutely insane. 35 grand. That's like more than most people make in a year, right? And for what, one day?" I keep telling people, if you're going to spend that kind of money, at least put it towards something useful, like a house. That gave me an idea. Second call was to my cousin Ryan, who I'd gotten closer to over the past year. Ryan worked in real estate and had always been the practical one in the family. I mentioned the wedding planning drama and how stressed my parents seemed about money lately. "Yeah, Aunt Carol mentioned something about that," Ryan said. "She's worried they're overextending themselves." I think they are. I just don't know if anyone's really explaining the long-term consequences. "What do you mean?" So, I laid out what I knew, the retirement withdrawals, the personal loans, the credit card debt, how they were funding not just the wedding, but Tyler's entire lifestyle. How at their age, they should be building savings, not depleting them. Ryan was quiet for a minute, then said, Jesus, that's actually really serious. They could end up homeless. I know, but every time someone brings it up, they get defensive. Someone needs to sit them down and run the real numbers. Show them what their situation will look like in 5 years if this continues. Ryan agreed to think about it, but I could tell he was already planning something. Third call was to my old college roommate, Stephen, who'd become a financial planner. I asked him about helping family members who were making bad financial decisions. The hardest part is usually getting them to admit there's a problem, Stephen said. Sometimes it takes a crisis to wake people up. What kind of crisis? Oh, credit card gets declined somewhere embarrassing. Bank calls about overdraft fees. Someone in their social circle points out how irresponsible they're being. Social pressure can be incredibly motivating. I thanked Stephen and hung up. My brain already working. Social pressure, public embarrassment, financial crisis. What if all three happened at the same time? That's when I remembered something important. The wedding venue Jessica had been posting about, Lakeside Manor, was owned by a guy named Tom Morrison. I knew Tom through work connections. My company had done some warehouse renovation for his catering business a couple of years back. Tom was a good guy, but he was also a businessman. He required substantial deposits for wedding bookings, especially for prime dates, and if I remembered correctly, he had pretty strict payment deadlines. I gave Tom a call supposedly to check on some warranty work from our old project. We chatted for a few minutes, then I casually mentioned that my brother was planning his wedding. Oh yeah? What venue is he looking at? Actually, I think he's booked with you guys. Lakeside Manor. What's the date? I told him. Tom pulled up his system. Tyler Richardson. Yeah, we've got him down for September 12th. Great day choice. They went with the premium package, ceremony, reception, full catering service. Should be beautiful. That's awesome. I know they're really excited. We're excited, too. Just waiting on their next payment, actually. Second deposit was due 2 weeks ago, but these things happen. People sometimes need extra time to get finances together. My heart started racing. Oh, I'm sure they'll get it sorted out. Probably, but we do have policies about payment schedules. If they're more than 30 days behind, we have to release the date to other couples. Hate to see that happen. September dates book up fast. I thanked Tom and hung up, my mind racing. They were late on the venue deposit. How late? And what would happen if they lost the booking right before the wedding? More importantly, what would happen if it fell through publicly in front of all their friends and family? I started making more calls to the photographer whose work Jessica had been posting about, to the florist, to the DJ, just casual inquiries about pricing and availability for my own hypothetical future wedding. What I discovered was fascinating. Most of these vendors hadn't received their deposits either. They were all being patient because wedding planning was stressful and delays were normal, but they all had deadlines coming up in the next month. My parents were trying to fund a $40,000 wedding with $12,000 in loan money and maxed out credit cards. The math didn't work. Something had to give. And when it did, it was going to be spectacular. The wedding was 2 months away when everything started unraveling. It began with Jessica's final dress fitting. She'd been posting about this for weeks. The big reveal moment, bringing both moms for the experience. Very Instagram-worthy stuff. Except the bridal shop called 3 days before the appointment to confirm payment for the dress balance. Apparently, the deposit they'd put down 4 months ago was just holding the dress, not paying for it. They needed another $1,400 before the fitting. Jessica panicked and called Tyler. Tyler called my parents. My parents discovered their primary credit card was maxed out. Any rational person would have taken this as a sign to scale back. Smaller wedding, fewer vendors, maybe a nice backyard ceremony instead of the country club extravaganza. But Jessica had already posted the save the dates. Her Instagram followers were expecting the wedding of the century. Her sorority sisters were planning their outfits. There was no way she was backing down. So, my parents did what they'd been doing for 3 years. They found money they didn't have. Dad took a cash advance on their second credit card, paying 26% interest for the privilege. The dress crisis got resolved, but it was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, the catering company called about their final payment. $7,000 due immediately to guarantee service for the date. This time, my parents couldn't cover it. They were completely tapped out. No available credit, no savings, no way to come up with $7,000. I found out because Mom called me, which literally never happens. She was crying, which also never happens. I don't know what to do, she said through tears. We've tried everything, but we just can't come up with the money. What money for the catering? They want $7,000 by Friday, or they're canceling the contract. 3 days. They needed $7,000 in 3 days. Mom, have you talked to Tyler about this? He's trying to help, but his savings are tied up right now. Tied up in what? His car lease and rent that my parents have been covering. What about postponing? Maybe planning something smaller? It's too late for that. Everything's already arranged. People have made plans. Jessica's been dreaming about this for months. Jessica's dreams. Jessica's Instagram aesthetic. Jessica's perfect wedding that other people were supposed to pay for. I'm sorry, Mom. I wish I could help, but $7,000 is way more than I have available right now. This wasn't technically a lie. I didn't have $7,000 sitting and checking. I just wasn't mentioning my savings account. I understand, she said quietly. We'll figure something out. But they didn't figure it out. The catering company canceled Friday afternoon, 2 months before the wedding. No caterer, no backup plan, and word starting to spread that there were complications with the planning. Tyler went into full crisis mode, calling every catering company within 100 miles. But here's the thing about wedding caterers, the good ones booked 6 months in advance. The ones with last-minute availability are either incredibly expensive or incredibly bad. He found one company willing to take the job. Their quote was $11,000, 60% more than the original caterer, and they required full payment up front. My parents didn't have $11,000. They didn't have $1,100. That's when Tyler made the call I'd been waiting months for. Tuesday night around 9 o'clock, for the first time in years, he wasn't calling to brag about something. He was calling to ask for help. Look, I know things have been weird between us lately, he said, his voice tight with stress, but I'm in a really bad situation here. What's going on? The caterer fell through. We found a replacement, but they want everything up front, and Mom and Dad can't cover it. How much? $11,000. I'll let that sink in. Jesus, Tyler, that's a lot of money. I know it is, but I'm desperate here. The wedding's in 8 weeks. If we don't lock this down, we're going to have to cancel everything. The moment I'd been building toward for months. Tyler calling me for help, admitting he was desperate, finally acknowledging that maybe I wasn't just the invisible little brother. $11,000 is like most of my emergency fund. I'd pay you back with interest. Whatever you want. Silence. It might take some time, but you know I'm good for it. Actually, I knew the opposite. Tyler was living paycheck to paycheck, propped up by parents who were now broke. He had no way to pay me back $11,000. I don't know, man. That's a huge ask. You're my brother. There it was. The family card. The assumption that blood relation meant unlimited financial obligation. You're right, I said slowly. I am your brother, which is why I've been watching Mom and Dad destroy their retirement funding your lifestyle for 3 years. That's not what happened, isn't it? They've pulled $50,000 out of their 401k to support you. They've taken on debt, ruined their credit, and now they can't afford groceries because they spent their food money on your engagement party. I didn't know it was that bad because you didn't want to know. It was easier to take the money and assume everything was fine. So, you're not going to help? I'm not going to enable this anymore. You want an $11,000 catering upgrade? Figure out how to pay for it yourself. He hung up, but I could hear Jessica sobbing in the background before the line went dead. 4 days later, they canceled the wedding. Not postponed. Canceled. A social media announcement about unforeseen circumstances and focusing on what really matters. Very diplomatic, very vague, but everyone knew what happened. In a town this size, word travels fast. The catering disaster, the financial problems, the family drama. The golden child's perfect wedding imploded because nobody could afford to pay for it. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Within a week of the cancellation, my parents went from being the proud supporters of their successful son to being the cautionary tale everyone whispered about at church and the grocery store. Uncle Pete was furious, not disappointed, actually angry, that they'd ignored his advice and doubled down on terrible decisions. He'd offered to help them create a budget, connect them with debt counselors, even co-sign a reasonable loan. Instead, they'd taken cash advances at predatory rates to fund a party. I wasted my time trying to help people who didn't want help, he told Aunt Carol, who told Ryan, who told me, but the real damage came from their social circle. These weren't wealthy people, mostly middle-class families and retirees who understood financial responsibility. When word got out that my parents had bankrupted themselves for a wedding that didn't even happen, the judgment was swift. Mrs. Henderson from church made comments about setting priorities and being an example. Mom's book club suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Dad's poker buddies started making jokes about living beyond your means. It was social exile delivered with small-town politeness. Tyler was dealing with his own humiliation. His work colleagues had been invited. His boss had bought a gift. His social media presence had been built around this elaborate celebration that just wasn't happening anymore. Jessica handled it about as well as you'd expect. She moved back with her parents and started posting vague Instagram stories about learning who has your back and discovering people's true colors. The engagement ended 2 weeks after the wedding cancellation. Tyler showed up at my apartment on a Thursday night looking like he hadn't slept in days. "She's gone," he said when I opened the door. "Jessica," she said, "she can't be with someone who'd put her through that kind of embarrassment. Her friends are asking questions she doesn't know how to answer." I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered years of family dinners where I was treated like furniture while he got celebrated for breathing. "I'm sorry," I said. And weirdly, I meant it a little. "I know you think I deserve this, do you?" He was quiet for a long time. "I never asked them to sacrifice everything. I thought they wanted to help." "Did you ever ask if they could afford it?" "No." "Did you ever offer to pay them back?" "I was going to. When my career took off more." "Tyler, you're 31. How much more taking off were you planning?" That seemed to hit him. He nodded slowly like something was finally clicking. "I screwed up," he said. "Yeah, you did. Is there any way to fix this?" I thought about it. Honestly, my parents were drowning in debt, facing social humiliation, staring at retirement with no savings. Tyler had lost his fiancée, his reputation, and his financial safety net. Could it be fixed? Maybe with years of work and humble pie and rebuilding trust. "Not by me," I said. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. "I guess I understand why you hate me." "I don't hate you, Tyler. I hate what you did to them. I hate that you took advantage of people who loved you so much they couldn't see they were destroying themselves. And I hate that you never once asked about my life or celebrated my achievements or treated me like I mattered, but I don't hate you." He left after that. Didn't argue or make excuses. Just walked to his car and drove away. The next few months were rough for all of them. Mom got a part-time job at Target to help with credit card payments. Dad started doing weekend handyman work. Tyler moved back into his childhood bedroom at 31, working sales without parental subsidies for the first time in his adult life. I kept my distance, not out of spite, but because I'd learned something important. Other people's choices aren't your responsibility, even when those people are family. But then, about 5 months after everything collapsed, I got a surprising call. Mom asked if I wanted to come for dinner. Nothing special, just family dinner, like old times. "Who's going to be there?" "Just us. Your father and me. Tyler's working late." I almost said no. What was the point? We just sit around pretending everything was normal while avoiding the obvious topics, but something in her voice made me reconsider. She sounded different, humbled maybe. So, I went. Their house looked the same outside, but you could see the changes if you knew what to look for. Dad's expensive lawn equipment was gone. He was using a basic push mower. The patio furniture had been sold. Mom was driving a 15-year-old Corolla instead of her leased SUV. Dinner was simple. Spaghetti with jarred sauce, bagged salad, store-brand garlic bread. Nothing like the elaborate meals Mom used to make when she was trying to impress Tyler's girlfriends. We ate mostly in silence for the first few minutes. Then Dad cleared his throat. "We owe you an apology," he said. I looked up surprised. "For what?" "For treating you like you didn't matter. For taking you for granted. For assuming you'd always be there while we focused everything on your brother." Mom was nodding, tears forming. "We were so proud of Tyler's success that we forgot to notice yours. So worried about his future that we ignored how well you were doing on your own. We made mistakes," Dad continued. "Financial mistakes and parenting mistakes. We're paying for them now and probably will be for years. But the biggest mistake," Mom said, "was not appreciating the son who never asked us for anything. Who built his own life and succeeded without needing us to hold his hand. We're proud of you," Dad said simply. "We should have said that years ago." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. The recognition I'd been waiting for without realizing it. "Thank you," I said. We talked for another hour about my work, my life, my plans. They asked questions they should have asked years ago. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was something. As I was leaving, Mom hugged me. Really hugged me. Not the awkward side hug I was used to. "I know we can't undo the damage," she said. "But if you're willing, we'd like to try being better going forward." I told them I'd think about it. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not for things to go back to how they were, but for them to be different.